Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Ashotara Sata Shri Shrimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Ashotara Sata Shri Shrimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Go Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 4, titled Vidura Approaches Maitreya, text number 11. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Veda Aham Antaha Manasi Ipsitam Te Dadami Yat Tat Duravapam Anyahi Satre Pura Vishva Shrijam Vasunam Mat Siddhi Kamena Vaso Tvaya Ishtaha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Vedahamantar manasipsitam te. Vedahamantar manasipsitam te. Dadami yatta duravapamanyai. Dadami yatta duravapamanyai. Sate pura vishvasrijam vasunam. Satre pura vishvasrijam vasunam. Matsiddhi kame navaso tvayeshtaha. Matsiddhi kame navaso tvayeshtaha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Vedahamantar manasipsitam te. Dadami yat tad duravapamanyai. Satre pura vishvasrijam vasunam. Matsiddhi kame navaso tvayeshtaha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Vedahamantar manasipsitam te. Dadami yat tad duravapamanyai. Satre pura vishvasrijam vasunam. Matsiddhi kame navaso tvayeshtaha. Please chant. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Vedahamantar manasipsitam te. Satre pura vishvasrijam vasunam. Siddhi kamena vaso tvayeshtaha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Vedahamantar manasipsitam te. Dadami yat tad duravapamanyai. Satre pura vishvasrijam vasunam. Matsiddhi kamena vaso tvayeshtaha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Vedahamantar manasipsitam te. Dadami yatta duravapamanyai. Satripura Vishvashajam Vasunam Matsiddhikame Natvasho Tvayishtaha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Vedahamantar Manasipsitam Te Tadami Yatta Duravapamanyai Satripura Vishvashajam Vasunam Matsiddhikame Navaso Tvayishtaha. Anyone else? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Vedahamantar Manasipsitam Te Yatta Duravapamanyai Pura Vishvashajam Vasunam Matsiddhikame Navaso Tvayishtaha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Vedahamantar Manasipsitam Te Tamiyatta Duravapamanyai Satripura Vishvashajam Vasunam Matsiddhikame Navaso Tvayishtaha. Matajis? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Vedahamantar Manasipsitam Te Tadamiyata Duravapamanyai Pura Vishvashajam Vasunam Matsiddhikame Navaso Tvayishtaha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Vedahamantar Manasipsitam Te Dadamyatta Duravapamanyai Tripura Vishvashajam Vasunam Matsiddhikame Navaso Tvayishtaha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Vedahamantar Manasipsitam Te Tadamyatta Duravapamanyai Tripura Vishvashajam Vasunam Matsiddhikame Navaso Tvayishtaha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Vedahamantar Manasipsitam Te Yatta Duravapamanyai Pura Vishvashajam Vasunam Matsiddhikame Navaso Tvayishtaha. Word for word. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. The personality of Godhead said, Veda, no. Aham, I. Antaha, within. Manasi, the mind. Ipsitam, what you desire. Te, your. Dadami, I give you. Yat, which is. Tat, that. Duravapam, very difficult to achieve. Anyai, by others. Satre, in the sacrifice. Pura, in the days of yore. Vishva, Shrijam, of those who expanded this creation. Vasunam, of the Vasus. Mat, Siddhi, kamena, with a desire to achieve my association. Vaso, O Vasu, Tvaya, by you, Ishtaha, ultimate goal of life. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. O Vasu, I know from within your mind what you desired in the days of yore, when the Vasus and other demigods responsible for expanding the universal affairs performed sacrifices. You particularly desired to achieve my association. This is very difficult to obtain for others, but I award it unto you. Purport. Uddhava is one of the eternal associates of the Lord, and a plenary portion of Uddhava was one of the 8 Vasus in the days of yore. The 8 Vasus and the demigods in the upper planetary systems, who were responsible for the management of the universal affairs, performed a sacrifice in the days of yore, desiring to fulfill their respective ultimate goals in life. At that time, an expansion of Uddhava, acting as one of the Vasus, desired to become an associate of the Lord. The Lord knew this because He is present in the heart of every living entity as Paramatma, the superconsciousness. In everyone's heart, there is a representation of the superconsciousness, who gives memory to the partial consciousness of every living entity. The living entity, as partial consciousness, forgets incidents of his past life, but the superconsciousness reminds him how to act in terms of his past cultivation of knowledge. Bhagavad Gita confirms this fact in various ways. Ye yata mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. Bhagavad Gita 4:11. Sarvasya chaham hridisan vishishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Everyone is at liberty to desire as he likes, but the desire is fulfilled by the Supreme Lord. Everyone is independent to think or desire, but the fulfillment of one's desire depends on the Supreme Will. This law is expressed as man proposes, God disposes. In the days of yore, when the demigods and Vasus performed sacrifice, Uddhava, as one of the Vasus, desired to enter into the association of the Lord, which is very difficult for those who are busy in empiric philosophical speculation or fruitive activities. Such persons have practically no information of the facts about becoming an associate of the Lord. Only the pure devotees can know, by the mercy of the Lord, that the personal association of the Lord is the highest perfection of life. The Lord assured Uddhava that he would fulfill his desire. It appears that when the Lord informed him by his indication to Uddhava, the great sage Maitreya finally became aware of the importance of entering into the association of the Lord. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaf Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijna Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagna Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanshakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavari Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Vedahamantar Manasipsitam te, Dadam Yat Tad Duravapa Manyai, Satre Pura Vishwashajam Vasunam, Mat Siddhi Ka Mena Vasotvayeshtaha. O Vasu, I know from within your mind what you desired in the days of yore, when the Vasus and other demigods responsible for expanding the universal affairs performed sacrifices. You particularly desire to achieve my association. This is very difficult to obtain for others, but I award it unto you. We are continuing the reading of this wonderful 4th chapter of the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where we see Vidura approaching Maitreya Muni. And what's being described here in this beginning part of the chapter, as we've been hearing in the previous classes, we've been having some very amazing speakers on this topic of Srimad Bhagavatam. Like yesterday, the class by Devaki Nandan Prabhu was just so enlivening and inspiring. And he was describing this different dynamic that's existing there, because right now we're having Lord Krishna, who is about to enact the pastimes of leaving this planet because he realizes that it's the right time, and he's sort of starting to wrap up his pastimes. And he's there with Uddhava and Maitreya Muni. And we're kind of going through different discourses here, and here we're hearing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, speaking. He's here addressing Uddhava. And one really important point that stuck out to me is how he addresses Uddhava as O Vasu. This is important in multiple contexts, because as is described by Srila Prabhupada in the purport here, that a plenary portion of Uddhava was one of the 8 Vasus in the days of yore. So Krishna here, he's illustrating and he's showing here his ability to know everything about past, present, and future. Krishna, as is described in the purport here, he's the super consciousness, meaning he's able to remember everything and anything about everybody. But we, as the individual or partial consciousness, we're only able to remember actually such a very insignificant amount. And we can see here in the life of Uddhava, Krishna is addressing him in this way, but this isn't something that's common knowledge just to everybody. But Krishna is someone who's able to know this because he is all-knowing. And I'll kind of go into that a little later, but first, I would just like to kind of go in a little bit to the description of the Vasus themselves. Because, before giving this class, I didn't really know so much about the Vasus. It isn't such like a common topic that you found everywhere in Srila Prabhupada's books. But I found 2 instances in the Bhagavad Gita that I would like to cite quickly here. Krishna describes in the 10th chapter, 23rd verse, that of all the Rudras, I am Lord Shiva. Of the Yakshas and Rakshasas, I am the Lord of wealth, Kuvera. And of the Vasus, I am fire, Agni. And of the mountains, I am Meru. So it's described here that Agni, or fire, is one of these 8 Vasus that are described. And also, when Arjuna is observing the universal form of Krishna, he describes that all of the various manifestations of Lord Shiva, the Adityas, the Vasus, the Sadhyas, the Vishvadevas, the 2 Ashvis, the Maruts, the forefathers, the Gandharvas, the Yakshas, the Asuras, and the perfect demigods are beholding you in wonder. So, this isn't just me that's having this question of what exactly are the Vasus. We can kind of tell that they're described as sort of in the same line as, like we see here, the Adityas, the Gandharvas. And this question was actually asked by Srila Prabhupada, where, I forget who exactly it was, but they were actually describing that they were just reading through this exact same pastime. And they basically quoted word for word from the purport, like they were asking Srila Prabhupada that I was just reading this pastime where Uddhava and Maitreya, they're with Krishna. And in the purport, you describe that Uddhava was one of these 8 Vasus. Can you kind of tell me more about this? So this is a quote here. Prabhupada said, Vasus, they are demigods. Before appearance of Krishna, some of the exalted demigods were ordered to come and arranged for his arrival. So Uddhava arrived, and many others arrived. They were coming from the heavenly planets. So these 8 Vasus, they're described as people who were arranging these universal affairs. They were in these higher posts in the heavenly planets, and they were sort of making sure everything's been going on. And it's described that they were from the days of yore. So since the beginning of the whole creation, they've been instrumental in making sure the whole universal manifestation and creation is working in the way that it should. And like everything in Shastra, it's not just everything happens just for one reason. There's actually a backstory to all these Vasus, which is described in the Mahabharata, actually, where there's a great sage, Vasishta, and he has this horse. And these 8 Vasus, they want to steal the horse. So they go and they take the horse, and they actually get cursed by the sage to come down in the material world and take birth in the material world. But there was one Vasu who was particularly responsible for this. And Vasishta said that because you are such great personalities, 7 of you will be able to be liberated from this curse almost immediately. I will arrange it in such a way that you will be the children of Ganga Devi, and 7 of you will be able to go back to your posts very, very quickly. But the one Vasu who is mainly in charge of arranging for the stealing of this horse, he will have to stay for a whole lifetime. So, fulfilling the curse of Vasishta, they took birth as the sons of Ganga. And this happened when one great king, Shantanu, was hunting in the forest. And he was chasing some sort of deer by the banks of a river, and he saw one very beautiful woman. So he inquired from her who she was, who her father was, what she was doing here, why she was just alone there by herself without any protection or any shelter. And she agreed to become his husband, and thus they had 8 children. But she only agreed to marry him under one condition, that no matter what she did, no matter what activities she engaged in, the king would not question any of her activities, and she would just let him proceed as he wanted. So child after child, what Ganga would do is she would bring them to her river, and she would immediately drown the children. And one might say, whoa, this is crazy. But these are actually the Vasus from the heavenly planets who had just, by the curse of Vasishta, had to appear in this material world. So she was actually liberating them back to their original post in the heavenly planets. Because it isn't just that we are this material body and this lifetime is all in all. We have an eternal spirit soul that goes from body to body to body. So it isn't that by her killing these children, which might seem like a very egregious activity, that she's ending their whole existence. But actually she was liberating them back to their original position in the heavenly planets. But after the first 7 children, the king, he just couldn't handle it anymore because he didn't have the broader understanding of the whole pastime that was going on. And he was very much attached to these children because he wanted to, the reason he accepted this wife was to protect her, and so they together could raise a family and have children. And he was very much disturbed that every single child, basically as soon as they were born, the child was killed immediately. So Ganga was bringing the 8th child over to the river, and he was like, wait. I can't handle this anymore. You can't be killing these children. Like I just can't handle it anymore. And then she actually described to him the original fate of these 8 Vasus from the heavenly planets. And then he was like, oh my God, what have I done? But she was like, we made this promise together, so I'm going to take this child with me and I'm going to go away. And after some time, maybe like 15, 20 years, the king was again hunting in the forest, and he came upon a very beautiful youth, a very splendid, teenage age person who actually looked very much like him, who was very, very beautiful. And he was thinking that this must be my son. But then there was like a river between them, and this was actually the Ganga. And the Ganga did not allow the king to see his son. But after praying and praying so much, she finally allowed him to be with his son. And this son was known as Bhishmadev, who is a very prominent character in the Bhagavad Gita, who's seen in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and who's very prominent throughout the Mahabharata. So many characters in this Mahabharata, like we're hearing described here, Uddhava, also Bhishmadev, they descended from the heavenly planets, as is described here, that they were demigods in the upper planetary system who, wanting to come and fulfill the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they descended into this material world. And they were called, as Srila Prabhupada says, that they were ordered to come and arrange for the Lord's arrival. So this is the nature of the Vasus, for those who didn't know. And it's described that one of the plenary portions of Uddhava was one of these Vasus. And they got this opportunity because Uddhava, being a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they've gotten the opportunity to have the personal friendship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Devaki Nandan Prabhu was describing yesterday how Uddhava is described as Sakha, meaning very close friend of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he broke it down in a way which I never really heard described before, by which they were on such an equal level which they were able to eat off the same plate. And I think Arjuna is also described in the Bhagavad Gita like that. And he also later on laments that oh, Yadava, I was treating you like just like my friend and my equal, but now I know that you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Uddhava, he also had this very close relationship with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this was awarded to him because he desired this in his previous life. The Vasus, being great demigods, they were performing various austerities to gain different facilities. And this specific Vasu, who is a plenary portion of Uddhava, desired the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And because Krishna is residing in the hearts of everybody, he was able to fulfill this desire for this Vasu. And Krishna describes this process in the Bhagavad Gita, which is quoted here. I'll go through and I'll quote some verses here from Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna very elaborately describes his position in relation to the individual soul, the jiva. Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sanvishishto matasmritir jnanam apohanam cha vedeshta sarver aham eva vedyo vedantakrit vedavit eva chaham. That I'm seated in everyone's heart, and for me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I'm the compiler of the Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So Krishna, he knows everything. He's within the heart of every single living entity. Everything that is alive, everything that has an individual soul, it also has the super soul presiding there with it. And the distinction between these two, Krishna also describes in the 4th chapter, Bahuni me vyatitanmi janmani tava charjuna tanyaham veda sarvani natvam veta parantapa. That because Krishna is describing at the beginning of this 4th chapter that he originally instructed the science to Arjuna, to the sun god, Vivisvan. And Arjuna's like, wait, but me and you are like around the same age. How is this even possible? And Krishna describes that in a previous time he instructed this knowledge, and Arjuna was also present there. But since Arjuna is in the position of jiva, or the subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna remembers, but Arjuna does not. So this is what's described there, that Krishna is able to remember everything about everybody, but we as the individual soul, we aren't able to remember as much. I mean, it's pretty much not even anything if you really think about it. We can barely even remember so much in this life. Like Prabhupada would often give the example when people would say that I am God, I am the controller. Prabhupada would say, you can't even remember what you did a week ago, 2 days ago. How can you be the supreme knower of everything? But Krishna, we can see as being described here, he remembers everything. In the 7th chapter, Krishna says that Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu veda na kashchana. O Arjuna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that happens in the past, all that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I also know all living entities, but no one knows. And we can see that there's this description here, as is being stated in the purport, that Krishna is seated in the heart of every living entity as Paramatma. And we can understand that there's three different features of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We hear in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavan iti Shabhyate. That there's the Brahman, there's the Paramatma, and then there's Bhagavan. Where the Brahman is this all-pervading energy, which is throughout everything. The Paramatma, it is the individual, as is described here, superconsciousness that is present within all the living entities. Then there is Bhagavan, the actual personality who is in control of all of these things. And specifically this Paramatma, Srila Prabhupada would often use the analogy of the two birds on a tree when relating it to the position of the jiva. If you can think of the analogy, the example, on one branch there might be two birds in a tree. And one bird is enjoying the fruits of this tree. Some fruits may be very sweet, some fruits may be very bitter, but they're engaging in some sort of activity. And the other bird is there observing and sanctioning these different activities of the other bird. The bird that is described as the Paramatma is not directly interfering with the desires, because as Prabhupada describes here, that everyone is independent to think or desire, but the fulfillment of one's desire depends on the supreme will. This law is expressed as man proposes, God disposes. So Krishna, he understands all of our desires. He understands every thought that goes through our mind, and he fulfills our desires according to our degree of surrender and our qualification to receive those desires and receive those different things or a different position or certain activities which we desire. Krishna fulfills those desires based on our qualification. And just like in this case of Uddhava, where he was desiring the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus Krishna rewarded him, I'm reading through this 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam right now, and I'm going through the pastime of Bali Maharaj, who from the external point of view is a great demon. He's the king of the demons. He conquered all of the demigods. He was the disciple of Shukracharya, the guru of the demons, and he was engaged in, externally, demoniac activities. But Krishna, being the super soul within his heart, was able to know his true desire. I haven't really read through the whole pastime yet, but it's described in the beginning when Lord Vamanadev appears before him. Bali Maharaj almost knows exactly what's going on, and he's very, very happy actually. Generally when the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes to take things away from the demons, they aren't very happy, right? We see in so many instances, like for example in the same 8th canto, right before the appearance of Vamanadev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears as Mohini Murti. And the demigods, which had this nectar of immortality, it was taken away from them by Mohini Murti and only distributed amongst the demigods. And after this, a big fight and a big battle ensued, in which the demons were very, very upset because the Supreme Personality of Godhead came and he took away this nectar which they worked so hard to get. But we see here in the case of Bali Maharaj that he's very happy when Krishna appears to take everything away from him, because it's his true heart's desire that he wants to surrender everything to Krishna. He's actually a devotee, even though externally he's in the position of a demon, because Krishna is the Paramatma residing in his heart, and he's the knower of all of Bali Maharaj's desires and what his true purpose of what he's engaging in, all these activities. Krishna comes to him and he allows him to be Krishna's devotee. This is described in Bhagavad Gita, the different degrees of surrender. Krishna describes in the 4th chapter, 11th verse, that as all surrender unto me, I award them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. So based on our degree of surrender, Krishna is willing to reward us. In the case of Bali Maharaj, in the case of Uddhava, in the case of Prahlad Maharaj, these are devotees that are completely surrendered, right? We can't even imagine their degree of surrender. You think of the instance of Prahlad Maharaj, right? So many abominable things were happening to him. He was being thrown off a cliff. He was being attacked by so many different weapons. But the entire time he had complete faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead that, no, Krishna will protect me. Even at the very end, when Hiranyakashipu was like, is he in this pillar here? Prahlad Maharaj was like, might as well, right? So these devotees who are completely surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna rewards them by giving them his association, and by allowing them to be his devotees and engage in so many different activities in service of him. And we can see there's this difference here that's being described between Uddhava and Maitreya, where Uddhava is someone who's completely surrendered. So Krishna is rewarding him fully, right? They're described almost as equals, as very, very close, intimate friends, right? As was being described yesterday, that Uddhava was able to enter any of Krishna's palaces in Dvaraka without any sort of notice, without ringing the doorbell, without letting him know beforehand. Uddhava, he was able to enter any of these palaces in Dvaraka. But this isn't just a position that's awarded to anybody. But because Uddhava was completely surrendered, he was able to have this very close relationship with Krishna. But as is being described, that this isn't necessarily the nature of Maitreya Muni. Prabhupada describes in the last purport that the Lord's attitude toward Uddhava was more intimate than that with Maitreya. So it isn't just like black and white, where you're either fully surrendered or you're not. But this process of Sharanagati, this process of surrender, it's a process. So it isn't just that one day you're in Maya and you're wanting to enjoy all these material things, and all of a sudden we wake up the next day and we're completely surrendered. We're experiencing the full bliss of Krishna consciousness, right? Everyone here has experienced that coming to Krishna consciousness, we had so many material desires. We wanted to do so many things in the material world. And it isn't just that when you become a devotee, all of a sudden all those things go away. Prabhupada describes that it's like a fan. When you turn off the switch of a fan, or when you unplug the fan, it still runs a little bit for some time. So when you start to take up this process of Krishna consciousness and aspire to become a devotee, it isn't just that all of your material desires automatically go away. But there are different gradations, there are different ways in which people approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He even says this in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Pull this up here really quick. That those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship the ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. And those who worship me will live with me. So based on one's different activity, based on one's level of surrender, they get a certain result. And gradually by going through this process, right, there's this karma, there's jnana, there's yoga, and then eventually one comes to the level of bhakti, this loving relationship with Krishna. And it's described how Maitreya, he's gradually coming to that platform, and he's gradually coming to that level. And he's really only able to come to that level by the association of Uddhava. And this is a very important point, actually. Prabhupada describes here that the Lord assured Uddhava that he will fulfill his desire. It appeared that when the Lord informed him by his indication to Uddhava, the great sage Maitreya finally became aware of the importance of entering into the association of the Lord. So it's only by the mercy, only by the association of great pure devotees that we're actually allowed to come close to Krishna, right? That's one of the main aspects of this position of accepting a guru, that the guru is someone who knows Krishna. The guru is someone who's very close with Krishna, as Uddhava is being described here. So they allow us to also come into that close association. It's described that if one wants to know the president, it's often very hard to approach him directly. You can't just walk into the White House, knock on the door and be like, "Hey, Mr. President, can I speak with you?" It's not so easy like that. You'll probably get swarmed by Secret Service and security, like they'll put on like a big show. But if you know someone who knows the president and you're close with them, then you can ask them, and you can, with your relationship through them, you can then approach the president. So by our relationship with such great pure devotees, we're actually able to approach Krishna, and we're actually able to achieve the goal which is actually sought forward by everybody, right? The karmis, the jnanis, the yogis, and the bhaktas, in the end, at the core of all their desires, they're actually searching after the same thing. Because the results that are achieved by the karmis, the jnanis, and the yogis, their results that they achieve are only temporary. They don't actually get the fulfillment of their desires by engaging in all these different activities. Temporarily, for some time, they might be momentarily satisfied, just like when one is thirsty, one takes a drink of water, and then they aren't thirsty for some time. But you can see, after some time, you become thirsty again. This is the position of these karmis, these jnanis, and these yogis, where they might get some sort of material facility, but their actual desire isn't actually satisfied, because their actual desire is to surrender to Krishna and become Krishna's devotee, to be an intimate associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And right, how do we know that this is the actual goal? How do we know that this is what we should be searching for? Krishna says it himself in Bhagavad Gita. In the 11th chapter, text number 55, which is actually described as the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, my dear Arjuna, he who engages in my pure devotional service, free from the contamination of fruitive activities and mental speculation, he who works for me, makes me the supreme goal of his life, and who is friendly to every living being, he certainly comes to me. So this is the really important part, that he certainly comes to me. Meaning he has the direct personal association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It isn't just that one attains some impersonal liberation, or one just gets freedom from his material desires, as the impersonalists do. But they actually get the personal association of Krishna, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One actually develops their personal relationship with Krishna. And that is how one is actually able to fully satisfy this material thirst that we keep on experiencing, which is, it's actually never quenched. It's actually described also in Bhagavad Gita that this lust, this desire to enjoy separately from Krishna, it's described as like an ever-burning fire, where with a fire, you can keep throwing unlimited wood into the fire, and the fire will just keep on taking as much wood as you throw in there. So you can try to satisfy your core heart's desire by throwing more of this material desires in, but it'll just keep on burning up, and keep wanting more. Actually, the more wood you throw into the fire, the more the fire increases. So this isn't actually the solution to our problems. And finally, Krishna also says that always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. So we can also become the very dear friend of Krishna by simply engaging in the process that is delineated by him. Right? Krishna just it isn't like some sort of mystery that we have to do all this sort of guesswork and mental speculation. That's why described here by Srila Prabhupada that Uddhava, as one of the Vastus, desire to enter into the association of the Lord, which is very difficult for those busy in empiric philosophical speculation or fruitive activities. Such persons have practically no information about the facts of becoming an associate of the Lord. Only the pure devotees can know, by the mercy of the Lord, that the personal association of the Lord is the highest perfection of life. So if one just tries to undergo so much mental speculation, develop their own philosophy, develop their own system, they won't actually be able to attain the ultimate goal of life. They won't actually be able to come to Krishna. But Krishna is so merciful and he's so kind that he delineates the exact process to come to him in Bhagavad Gita. He gives us the exact process, right? He says here, always think of me, become my devotee, worship me and offer all homage to me. Thus you will come to me without fail. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I will deliver you from all kinds of sinful reactions. Do not fear. So Krishna, he's practically giving us the process. He's giving us the scientific way in which we can gradually approach him. Right? We go out on the streets so often, and we meet so many people, and basically everyone has their own philosophy. Everyone has their own idea of what the goal of life is, who I am, and how to attain it. I actually had some really practical experience when I was just on my recent traveling Sankirtan trip. We were up in Columbus, and there's a couple instances that I'll cite, but the main one was we were distributing books at one of these Body, Mind, Spirit Expo conventions. And anyone who's ever been to these knows that there's some really powerful homies there. They're really awesome. Where they'll talk to you for about 30 minutes, or they can honestly keep talking forever, but they really want to tell you about their own philosophy, their own ideas. And right, you show them the books, you tell them about the books, and you're like, well, you see, actually, you're saying all these different things, but this is actually the real thing. And they then quote their whole philosophy, and you have to listen to them for 15, 20 minutes, and you're just like, bro, when will this guy just be quiet, bro? Come on. And there was this one guy where, right, we often hear that these mental speculators, they're very much into this word jugglery. And this guy, he was basically saying the ultimate goal of life is to enjoy the material world. And just to enjoy the material body basically as much as you can. And he was saying a bunch of other crazy stuff, like he got his name from the Egyptian gods, and he went through this ceremony by which they gave him his name, but he already knew what his name was. He just accepted it, and he's creating his own religion, and he's wanting to spread it all throughout the world. But one main thing that shocked me, and again on this point of word jugglery, is that and generally when these homies, they say stuff like this, they'll say some crazy thing, and they'll look at you expecting you to be whoa, that just blew my mind. But you're just bro, that was the stupidest thing I heard in my whole life. He was looking at me super intensely, the goal of life is entertainment. Enter, attain. You attain the goal of life by entertainment. And I would just look at him bro, are you serious right now, bro? That is so stupid. But he was expecting to just blow my mind, and for me to be oh my God, you just gave me all the answers by which I can finally be happy. And I was talking to this guy for some time, and even though he's created this whole philosophy and he's created all these different ideas about how to achieve the goal of life, he himself is not happy. He's suffering so much. He's going through so many things. Finally, I was able to convince him to give $5, and I gave him a Science of Self-Realization after listening to this guy for so long. At least he got Prabhupada's book, so maybe now he'll actually be able to come to this higher level of understanding. But we can see that people who engage in this mental speculation, who just try to go here and there and think this, think that, they actually just waste their human form of life. And that's why Krishna, through the Bhagavad Gita, he delineates everything so specifically. He gives us the exact process. So we don't have to waste so much time in this valuable human form of life. Especially in Kali Yuga, we don't have so much time, right? This human form of life in the Kali Yuga, it's actually very short. Our intelligence isn't so great, and we tend to waste so much time doing so many different things. So Krishna very easily gives us this process of how to come to him. And also, we were distributing books at this Ohio State University, and we were invited by some of the students to come speak at their philosophy club. philosophy, it's supposed to be like a systematic, logical understanding by which you can kind of understand like who you are in the universe, right? What is your relationship with the Supreme Being, and ultimately, what is the goal of life? That's mostly what philosophy it boils down to. And right, we were basically preaching straight up from Bhagavad Gita, from the science of self-realization, and most of them, they were like, they were very receptive, they were very into it, but there was some people where they're like, oh yeah, that's like a very good idea, but then they were like, oh, also there's this idea, maybe there's this guy's idea, yeah, this is also like Descartes or Kant or some other philosophers, they were like quoting their ideas. But if you actually sort of go to look through their ideas and you kind of get to the root of them, they don't actually make the most sense. Some of them have some idea, because just simply by logic, one can deduce that there's a creator of the universe, because anything that we see that is created, even by us, it has to have a creator. So just like that, they were able to have some idea, some understanding. But most of what they were doing, and if we weren't there at the meeting, they have these meetings every single week, and if we weren't there, they would just spend the whole meeting, the whole hour and a half, 2 hours, just simply wasting time. They would talk so much, and they would spend so much time speculating about this, speculating about that, oh, maybe this, oh, maybe that. But at the end of the day, all they would do was just waste 2 hours of their time, because they won't actually come to the ultimate goal of life. Because to come to this, one has to have the association of devotees. One has to have the books of Srila Prabhupada. Right? It's described this nate vidu svartagatim hi Vishnu, that unless you're engaged in pleasing Krishna, all of your efforts, they're ultimately useless. So that's why we're trying to help out so many people by going out and every day, every person we meet, trying to distribute these books. Because you meet so many people and you understand they're wasting so much time, they're wasting their human form of life. Everything that they're doing isn't ultimately for their happiness, for their ultimate satisfaction. So that's why we're sincerely wanting to go out there every single day. It isn't just some mundane selling of books, but the book distributor is sincerely wanting to help this person out. It's like the doctor, sure, what he's doing, it's a certain position, he might get paid for it, it might be a job, but ultimately he's trying to act for the benefit of the patient. Ultimately, he does what he does every single day to help people out. So we're going out every single day because we're trying to cure the disease of the conditioned souls. And we see that these books, they're the best antidote, they're the best formula because they give the quickest relief. On every single page, it isn't that you'll go through Prabhupada's books and you'll think, oh, enter, attain. No, you'll hear, always think of me, become my devotee, worship me and offer homage to me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. Krishna is promising us that if we simply engage in this process that's delineated by him in the Bhagavad Gita, naturally we will come to him. And by reading these books and by having the association of devotees, we're actually able to attain this high position of being a close associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we see that Maitreya Muni, he had so many things, he had so many facilities, but even after all his austerity, all his activities, all his knowledge, finally after the association of Uddhava, he was actually able to become aware of the importance of the personal association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, by giving people the books of Srila Prabhupada, we're not only able to give them Krishna's own words and Krishna's own understanding, but we're actually able to give them Prabhupada's association too. It isn't that we should think, oh yeah, I'm like such a big guy, and I'm a pure devotee, and by going out there, I'm liberating so many people by my association. But by giving people these books, we're actually able to give them the association of the Jagat Guru, of Srila Prabhupada, of the Mahabhagavat pure devotee who came, especially to the Western countries, to liberate everybody. So we should go on, we should keep distributing these books so people can come up to this level where they're able to have the personal association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Most people, they aren't even aware that there's a person which they can have the topmost benefit and the topmost association with, right? Everyone in this material world, they have the association of so many different people, and they have so many different friends, they have so many partners, they have family members, they have so many different relationships, but they don't know that the ultimate supreme relationship that all of these relationships are ultimately stemming from is one's relationship with Krishna. But by giving them this knowledge, by giving them this information, by giving them the association of devotees, they're actually able to come up to this level. So let's keep on doing it. Let's keep on distributing books. Let's keep on helping out the fallen conditioned souls. Right? We're going out there every single day. Like we just had this Sankirtan meeting yesterday, and Chandan Acharya Prabhu was describing that mode that you have to get into, where like he was describing that it's like he's always on book distribution. He's always distributing books because he can always tap into that mindset when he's out there, where just immediately he can just go into it, and he can sincerely have this desire to help out so many jivas, so many conditioned souls, and he's able to distribute so many books. Like just recently, he went to the airport after not going for like months, and he did 71 bhakta stacks. Like he did huge, and he was describing to us how that there's this certain mood that you can imbibe, and there's a certain mindset that you can have by which you can just go out there and help so many people out and distribute so many books. So we should engage in this activity. We should engage in this book distribution, and we should do it sincerely by wanting to help the fallen conditioned souls. And Prabhupada would often say that, because his disciples would ask him, we're like distributing so many books, but is there any chance that we might not go back to Godhead? Prabhupada says that you're helping so many others come to Krishna. You're helping so many other people go back to Godhead. Why would you question that you're not going to go? So simply by engaging in this book distribution and sincerely trying to help out the fallen conditioned souls, we will also be able to attain this position of Uddhava. We'll be able to attain the personal association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I'll end my class here. If there's any questions, corrections, or comments, I'll take those now. Jidi Girish? Prabhu?
Prabhu, you're telling the story of the 8 Vasus, and how they stole the horse from Vashishta Muni, and there's like the main one who, I guess, conducted the stealing. And then you described how in their next lives they were born but then liberated. But then the 8th child was not, I guess, liberated. So I was wondering, is that 8th child Bhishma Dev?
Yeah. That's what I said.
Yeah, sorry, that's not my question. Oh. The question was, is the one who stole, like who conducted the stealing, is that Bhishma Dev? Okay,
yeah. And I mean, we can practically see that it isn't that Bhishma Dev was less fortunate, but actually he also attained the personal association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And right, it's described in the first canto how Bhishma Dev, he actually left his body in the personal association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it isn't that by not going back to the heavenly planets and by staying in the material world, he was less fortunate. He was actually even more fortunate than those who were liberated and went back to their post as a Vasu. So that's an important point as well. Ali Krishna Prabhu?
My question is similar. So then it says that Uddhava was a Vasu. So the 7 went back and then...
So it's described that a plenary portion of Uddhava was one of the 8 Vasus. So it isn't that Uddhava himself was one of the 8 Vasus, but it's like a plenary portion of him was one of those 8 Vasus who had that desire to have the Lord's personal association. It's like we read in the Chaitanya Charitamrita how all these personalities, they weren't just one person or one individual, but they were actually so many different personalities. Like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, he was both Krishna and he was Srimati Radharani. So it's kind of difficult for us to understand, but there's so many different people who are having the opportunity to have the Lord's personal association. So it isn't just that Uddhava was one of these 8 Vasus, and that's like who he was in his previous life, but it's described that a plenary portion of Uddhava. Does that answer your question?
So one of the children that got drowned in the Ganga went back to their post, but then
But
that was also an expansion of Uddhava.
yeah, because they got cursed to come down to the material world, but this Vasu, he also engaged in so much activity to have the Lord's personal association.
I was also thinking about this during our class because when I read the purport, this particular point wasn't exactly intuitive to me. Because it seems like, well, it doesn't seem like Srila Prabhupada starts the purport. He says, Uddhava is one of the eternal associates of the Lord. And then at the same time, you have basically a description of Uddhava's appearance.
Right.
And how he got the Lord's association. Now, how I kind of reconciled it was, we talk about also, well, one thing is that you have in the 10th canto, in the first chapter, after Lord Brahma approaches Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, about the whole problem with the material world, specifically with the earth planet. He goes back and he tells the demigods, specifically he says, appear, the word he uses is anksha. He says, Bhavadbir anksha. It's like Yadushu, anyways, I forgot exactly what the verse is, but he uses this word anksha, and Srila Prabhupada translates it as plenary portion. So he says, appear as plenary portions, basically, to assist the Lord in his pastimes. And, of course, it's not exactly the same because the demigods aren't nitya siddha, they're not like eternal associates of the Lord. But then I was thinking also you have like Devaki and Vasudev. Krishna told Devaki and Vasudev that, in your previous life you were such and such and I was your son, and he gave all these. So it's interesting because they're also eternal associates of the Lord. They're not like conditioned souls who then got the association of the Lord by pious activity or something like that. I guess how I thought of it is that it seems like these devotees in the spiritual world, you could say they come down to assist the Lord in his pastimes, but it's not just like, the Lord's going to, do his pastimes and immediately they just like show up. It seems like also it's kind of like a drawn out sort of thing. Like Uddhava appeared ultimately or he expanded himself as one of these Vasus, ultimately to assist the Lord in his pastimes, to get the Lord's association, to assist him in his pastimes. But it seems like just some kind of like, I don't know, there was some kind of like other elaborate arrangement that he appeared as one of the Vasus. And so I guess that's how I kind of reconciled it. Again, it wasn't intuitive to me also why exactly it had to be that way, but I guess all these people are free agents that can do what they like.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly like super clear to me either, but I think we were describing in previous classes how like you were giving that example of Vasudeva and Devaki and of Nanda and Yashoda about how they're eternally liberated persons, but other people who also desire to have this position of being like the mother and father of Krishna in Vrindavan, they're also part of that Nanda and Yashoda, Vasudeva and Devaki, but it's like a different portion as well.
Specifically, it's also mentioned that like due to their, like it says like due to their, like pious activity or devotional service, they got the Lord as but it's not exactly like that because they come from the spiritual world to assist the Lord in his pastime. So it seems to me like it's not just like Krishna decides to come to the material world and then all of his associates just like, show up like that. But some of them at least come down because there's other arrangements that have to be made, I guess. They come down and they... Yeah, also, I guess, Jitagirish Prabhu is making the point that also to show the process of sadhana bhakti, which I think is also a relevant point,
Any other questions?
Mitchell. So you said Bhishma was the Vasu that came back? Is that the idea?
Huh?
So you said like Bhishma Dev, he was like all the other Vasus got liberated, but him.
Yeah.
What about Dronacharya? Because he was also a Vasu.
I'm not exactly sure. From what I read in the Mahabharata and from the research that I did yesterday, in the appendixes of that Mahabharata, I think it's Krishna Dharma Prabhu or something like that. His Mahabharata in the appendices, I just briefly read through the pastime, and that's all the information that was there. That the main Vasu, who was cursed to stay in the material world for longer because he was the main one that like orchestrated the whole stealing of the horse thing. He became Bhishma Dev. But I mean, clearly it's described here that Uddhava, one of his plenary portions, was also one of the Vasus. So it can also be there that they went back and they got liberated, but then they came back again to get the Lord's association or something. Yeah, there's just 8. Yeah, it's described in the 6th canto about how they're the sons of one of the daughters of Daksha, whose name is Vasu, and thus they are called the Vasus. So they're coming from that lineage.
Second question, I don't know if you know this, but does the
Probably
name Vasudeva have anything to do with Vasus? Or is that
I was
completely different?
actually thinking about that, and I was doing a little bit of research trying to see if in like the word for word, it described like Vasu as like a part of like Vasudev, because we have like Vasudev and Devaki, because it's not like the Vasus, but it's the Vasus. So I was trying to find some correlation there also, but I couldn't really find anything.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't like spend like 2 hours
Okay.
researching it, but like I like did the search on Vedabase and try to see if there was like a word for word correlation. But mostly what I found was kind of similar to this. Like whenever it said Vasu or Vasunam, it said one of the Vasus or of the Vasus. I didn't really find any direct correlation there with Vasudev or Vasudev. But maybe you could, since you have all the resources.
Wait. I think I might have just found something. Okay, actually, I won't say. I don't know for sure.
Mataji's, any questions? Okay. David, you have a question? Can someone give David the mic?
Yeah. I had a question regarding this philosophy club example and that how people are wasting time.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is regarding preaching. So when we face people like that, or when we get in contact with them, and sort of we have to like give an opinion, they present their ideas. So there is like different approaches to how you deal with the situation. You can be like straight and just stand by what you actually think, or just try to be nice with them and make them favorable to Krishna consciousness. So what do you think, like what is the proper way to approach a situation like this, which is most beneficial for them and also to be truthful at the same time?
Yeah, so I mean, even Devaki Nandan Prabhu was mentioning yesterday about how it isn't by preaching to a different audience that you have to necessarily dilute the message. But you have to kind of see your audience, see where they're at. Like a lot of people at these philosophy clubs, they were asking a lot of questions. So, a good way to engage them is, to answer their questions from things like Prabhupada's books, Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada's lectures, the lectures of your own spiritual master, and the instructions of your own spiritual master in a way by which they can understand it. It isn't that, okay, this person's never heard of Bhagavad Gita before, so I have to tell them that, okay, now they have to do like yoga poses and exercises and like they have to work on their like pranayama and their asana. But you can still package the same philosophy as Prabhupada did so many times with different crowds of people. So, right, preaching requires some intelligence too. It isn't just that for every single person you just immediately start reading out of the Bhagavad Gita like a Bible basher and being like, abandon all varieties of religion and surrender unto me. I shall deliver you. All sinful reactions do not fear. And then if you don't surrender to Krishna, you're going to hell, right? You don't have to like do that. But you should be able to package it in a specific way that it's understandable to them and it gets the point across. Like you shouldn't necessarily want to upset them and, tell them something that'll make them unfavorable to Krishna consciousness, but you should still be able to present the same philosophy as Prabhupada did, as it is, and be able to answer their questions and do all of this as well. And that's what I found, is that I just answered their questions in a way that they could understand, and so many of them were super receptive. Like we were talking about in this Sankirtan meeting yesterday, pretty much all of them took books, so they all have Prabhupada's books. And after one of the meetings, they all came back to the local temple with us, and we took like the Radhashtami feast together, and we had like a good discussion. So they got Prabhupada's books, they got devotee association, they took prasadam, and I'm still in contact with some of them too. So it isn't just that every single person in the room you're going to be able to convince, but by breaking things down in a very understandable, logical, and systematic way, for the specific individual, you'll gradually be able to bring them up in Krishna consciousness. Amog, you've found it?
Just something else on the Vasus. Actually, interestingly enough, Drona, the Vasu Drona that Mitron was referring to, different from Dronacharya, but he took birth as Nanda Maharaj in Krishna's Leela, and his wife took birth as Yashoda Devi. So that's something interesting. Yeah, Drona and Dara. So anyway, that's something.
Shivara Maharaj's book, Yashoda Janani, is like elaborating on this topic a lot, like he's researching. Yeah, so in that book, like Maharaj has done a research of this specific philosophical topic that you just spoke about, like how is that Krishna's associates who come from the spiritual world also come through like a material rebirth process, and I think this might be worthy to look into that. I read it, but I don't remember all the details.
Bottom line is, I don't really have like the highest level of understanding on it, so I'll kind of divert that to someone who's more scholarly. Yeah, definitely. Time.
It's about the definition of Vasudeva. Super excellent wealth, Vasu, of pure devotional service. That's why Vasudeva has his name.
Yeah. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki